Roll call.
Assemblyman Sharpenberger.
Here?
Assemblyman Aganamore.
Here, without a button. I'm here.
Assemblywoman Katz. Here. Assemblywoman Hall.
Here.
Assemblywoman Colazo Scale.
Here.
Vice Chair Sumter.
Here.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Christina, please read the record on AR 180.
Assembly Resolution Number 180 urges the DEP, Pinelands Commission, and Highlands Water Protection and Planning Council to engage in alternative forest management practices during periods of drought when prescribed burning is unsafe.
We have a few witnesses that would like to testify today, and first we're calling Stephen Lee, the fourth. Stephen here?
I'm trying to get there.
The third left.
Where you want me? Third left.
Anywhere you want.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Push the button.
Push the button. Those instructions and everything.
There you go.
Hey, how's that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for taking this resolution first on the agenda. I'm a cranberry grower from Burlington County. Been growing cranberries for 7 generations. We have an 1,800-acre farm in the dead middle of the Pine Barrens. I want to thank Andrea Katz, Assemblywoman Katz, for taking the initiative to sponsor this resolution. What this is asking for is to manage the forest. Many of you have heard in the news about forest fires that have happened in New Jersey over the last couple months. We had one in Ocean in Salem County a week or so ago, one in Long Island last week. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a crisis situation when it comes to managing our lands in New Jersey. We do not have a forest management plan in New Jersey. We have New Jersey Forest Fire Service, which is exactly what it does, fight fire. They are one of the most outstanding organizations in the country when it comes to managing forests. We are not funding them enough, in my opinion, but it's not their responsibility to manage the resource. It's the state's responsibility to manage the resource. And unless we begin to do things like thinning, which means cutting trees, we will be in a lot of trouble. And the Pinelands as we know it, and the forested areas in our state as we know it, will no longer exist. And if you don't believe me, look back on your news feeds from January on the West Coast. Because of a lack of forest management is what got California to that point. That's exactly what will happen here. I want to emphasize my upstanding respect and admiration for the members of the New Jersey Forest Fire Service because they have been able to manage the resource the best they can with the least amount of funding and the least amount of support from the state. Unless the legislature and the citizens of the state demand for action in terms of managing the resource, which we all love to talk about and love to recreate in, unless we do something drastic soon, the resource will no longer be there. That's all I have. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
I just thank you, Steve, for coming in. We talked about the fires in California, but we had some fires in the Pinelands this summer. You were out there fighting them yourself. And that was scary. That was very, very hot. But that area that was on fire was your property. We are talking about the fire service and about the woods and about protecting our environment, but it's also about protecting human safety as well, because you were in a pretty dangerous situation that day. But thank you for coming in and bringing this to our attention.
If I may add one more thing. To give you an idea about how bad it is right now, we're almost at St. Patrick's Day. We haven't had any green beer yet or anything. This time last year, we had 76 wildfires year-to-date in the state of New Jersey. This year, 309. 987 acres burned so far this year, 23 in 2024. Total incidents last year, 375. I'm sorry, 375 this year, 150 last year. 309 acres since January have burned. 309 versus 76. The Forest Fire Service can do the best they can, but unless we start to actively manage the forest, it won't matter. Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, if you can, Steve, if you don't mind sending us a copy of that data when you can send it to the Assemblywoman, she'll get it to us.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. It's great to hear from somebody who lives in the area and is affected by it. But one of the things too, if you speak to any of the fire departments in New Jersey, I'm from Monmouth County, and we're sort of have some rural areas there. They'll say in addition to thinning out the forest, culling or moving some of the fallen trees, which acts as kindling. And there's a little bit of a debate on two sides where you have some folks say, well, that creates habitat for certain animals and everything, you have to leave it. And the fire department will say, once a fire gets started and you have a lot of dead trees and brush down there, that it takes off like wildfire. It acts as kindling wood. So would you agree, I guess from where you are, that is an issue also?
100%. And the problem, the problem is that this time of year, we historically, on our farm, our 1,800-acre farm, which by the way has been recognized nationally for our forestry efforts, we can't do any controlled burning at all right now. And the state doesn't either, because of the drought, because of the conditions right now. If we had the ability and had the foresight to be able to thin areas, to cut down the fuel load, we would be in a much safer position. But to your point, there's a lot of stuff that falls. If we leave it sit there, it's a problem. But if we had a management plan to where we thin that out and did some controlled burning periodically, that would be substantially safer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. It was a pleasure talking to you at the Agriculture Convention a while back on this issue. You are preaching to the choir. I think this is such a critically important issue. I asked for there to be hearings on forest management on December 6th because meeting with the Forest Service in my district, where 40% of New Jersey is covered in forests, 71% of my district is covered in forests. So when it lights up in flames, we are feeling it in the northwest and southeast and southwest corners of the state in a major way. But it's effective. Heck, Livingston was it Livingston? Some of these towns, no community is safe from wildfire. So we have to be proactive. We have to get serious here, start managing our forests in an intentional way. And I think this is a great resolution. I'm going to vote for it. It's focused specifically on the period during droughts, which of course is important. But we need to be managing our forests outside of the drought season too, right? When we're not in a drought, we need to be managing our forests. And so I'm just going to make a pitch for legislation I'm drafting in a bipartisan way to increase the amount of prescribed burns in the state. Bring it up to 50,000 over a period of 5 years, 40,000 in the Pinelands, 10,000 elsewhere. We got to do this. We got to do it in a bipartisan way because a young man died due to a wildfire in New Jersey last year, and we can't let that happen again. Thousands upon thousands of acres burnt, whole businesses, homes destroyed. We got to get serious on this issue. I think it's a great first step, but there are many more steps ahead. So we got to get serious here. Thank you.
As something that I couldn't agree with you more. The first step is the key here. It's a good resolution, and I applaud the sponsors for it. But you're 100% correct. More work has to be done, and we can't. And the answer is not to just throw money at the Forest Fire Service. They need money. Trust me. Believe me, they need money. But we have to manage the resource.
Next we have Ian Bresto.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Steve.
Good afternoon.
Jersey Highlands Coalition is in opposition of the resolution as it stands now. We do agree that fire is a pressing and urgent concern in the state, especially given last year and the trends that we see moving forward in the climate. There will be extended periods of drought with significantly increased torrents of rain. All of this needs to be taken into consideration. Our main concern is that neither the Highlands Commission nor the Highlands Council were consulted prior to the resolution. We want stakeholder engagement to be involved in the process. The New Jersey Highlands is an important area in Jersey. It provides clean drinking water for over 70% of New Jersey residents. And we have been having issues on Sparta Mountain with forest management when it is used in an amorphous way, when it's just used as a forest management practice without a specific plan in place. We have been seeing clear cuts in Sparta Mountain, and we just don't want to see that to our natural resources. Just as in the whereases of this resolution, we acknowledge the fact that the importance of forests for New Jersey. Left unchecked, if we go too far in one direction, it'll also pose a threat to those resources. Again, we want to reiterate how much we support the fire service, especially last year with the forest fires in North Jersey. But we want to have stakeholder engagement when consulting with the rest of this legislation, or this resolution as it moves forward. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Horatio Nichols, better known as Ray.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Nichols. Most people know me as Ray, Horatio being a long name, and my grandfather going by
Hit the
Ray.
red button, please. Horatio, hit the red button. Hit the button. Perfect.
That better?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I use Ray every day and Horatio on all my forms. On my voting rolls, I'm known as Horatio. Anyway, I grew up in this state. I was a conservationist while still a teenager. While I earned my Eagle badge, I also was active in the 4-H program and spent 2 summers working on the staff of the state 4-H camp in Stokes Forest. I bring up that little bit of history because it's important for all of you ladies and gentlemen to understand the history of New Jersey with respect to natural resources. There is 40% of the state covered with trees right now. When I was a kid, the number was 40%, but it's not the same land. A lot of the farmers who were active farming prior to World War II gave it up, and their land got converted into trees. Meanwhile, lots of other people were cutting down trees in order to make a profit and also to provide forest resources. It's a difficult task to manage the forest resources of New Jersey. Before you vote on this resolution to approve it or deny it, I would ask that you deny it or table it at this point. It was just introduced the other day. It contains facts that appear to indicate that it's necessary to develop alternatives to prescribed burning. One reason, as the first gentleman spoke, is that the Forest Service has trained people, but not really enough of them, to conduct prescribed burning during those windows of opportunity during the course of the year when there's not too much drought, when it's not too wet. If it's been wet, the plants won't burn. It's not an effective time. So there has to be a window of opportunity for prescribed burning. And that window of opportunity is a function of meteorological conditions. It's also a function, how much prescribed burning can occur when those windows are open is a function of personnel. There have to be people on the ground lighting those prescribed burns, watching them, making sure they don't cause any damage to infrastructure. And you may know that Senator Smith, 2 years ago, invited everybody who was interested in the forests of New Jersey to come together and come up with a set of resolutions, a set of suggestions for a forest management plan. Unfortunately, he collected that just a few months ago. Well, he collected it a few months ago, which is not unfortunate, it's most fortunate. One of the reasons it took so long for the various parties to get together and come up with suggestions is that this part of the state of ours is complex geologically. There's South Jersey, Pinelands area. In North Jersey, there's the Highlands, Route 1, sort of the dividing line. The thing is, managing the forests in those two areas is complicated. It's different. The Pinelands are a fire-dependent ecosystem. The pine cones don't open to release their seeds unless they've been heated up by a fire. So there's no regeneration unless there's a fire. Up north, the acorns have to sit on the ground for a year before they'll germinate. It produces a lot less duff, the stuff that will burn. One of the things that you need to know about the alternative to prescribed burning is what is referred to in one place as the alternative that's recommended is thinning. I've seen woods thinned. Up in Stokes Forest, I saw forests thinned. Forests that had been planted by the CCCs in the 1930s had grown up and they need to be thinned so that the remaining trees could grow bigger and become more valuable. But when thinning occurs, if it's done by private people who are in there to take out logs that they can then sell, turn them into valuable forest products, they are not interested in the branches and the small twigs and the leaves and all that kind of stuff. They just want the logs. What happens to the rest of the stuff? It's left on the ground. So next year, after that stuff is no longer green and has died, it's excellent fuel for the next time a fire comes along. So harvesting for thinning could be done, especially during droughts. The equipment can get in there, but there are downsides to doing it in terms of forest fires as well as anything else. So last thing is the data that was presented in the resolution talks about 10,000 fires a year. Only 12 of them were larger than 100 acres. The remainder of them, we don't know if they were 99 acres or 1 acre. We don't know how many the Forest Service responded to, how many that were really small and were taken care of by the local fire department. I ask that before you provide a resolution that will suggest you, but if any resolution comes from the Assembly, you can be sure that the agencies to whom it's directed will heed it very carefully. What would be a much better policy decision is to put more money into DEP to support the fire service. It's been short-changed for decades. I know because I worked in DEP for a long time. What was I want to say? Yes, I was a conservationist for my entire life. But this was thought up just and entered into the business for this Assembly committee just a few days ago. Senator Smith asked people, it took 2 years to develop a forest management plan. And it turned out that there were lots of people who had one idea, and lots of people had another idea. And so Senator Smith hasn't figured out what to do yet. But one thing those two different groups agreed on was that the best technique is prescribed burning. If you're going to make a decision that is policy, you make decisions on policy every time you adopt the budget. If you're concerned about forest fires, adopt a budget that has more money for the professional to manage the forests. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
attention.
Next, we have Dr. Rebecca Lebuck for Richard Lawton. In favor, no need to testify.
I'm opposed to the resolution going forward.
Yeah,
Yes, and if anybody has questions, I'll be glad to answer. I didn't mention it earlier, but I have a master's degree in forest ecology.
great, thank you. Thank you. Any questions? No questions? It's good.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the work you're all doing.
Thank you.
Motion on the bill?
So moved. Second.
On the motion to release Assembly Resolution number 180, Assemblyman Scharkenberger,
Yes.
Assemblyman Inganamore,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Katz,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hall,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Colazo Skill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sumter,
Yes.
Chairman Kennedy,
Yes.
the resolution is released.
Okay, next we have A 3645. Christina, please read the resolution.
Assembly Bill number 3645, as amended, establishes the Low Carbon Transportation Fuel Standard Program in the DEP. And bear with me, it's a long list of amendments. The proposed committee amendments to the bill revise the findings and declarations section of the bill and various definitions, add a definition for the term of overburdened community, require the DEP to establish the transportation fuel standard within 18 months after the bill's enactment rather than 1 year, provide that the program's goal is to reduce the average carbon intensity of diesel and gasoline used in the state by 5% below 2019 levels by the year 2030, subject to biennial reviews commencing in 2027, rather than 10%. Revise the language governing how the DEP calculates the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of transportation fuels. Require the program to include a mechanism by which participants may generate credits from activities and projects that result in the reduction of carbon intensity of transportation fuels. Clarify that gasoline, diesel, or other fuels used by aircraft, railroad locomotives, military vehicles, and interstate waterborne vessels, or for other non-transportation uses, are exempt from the low carbon standard, but may be used to generate credits on a voluntary opt-in basis, provided that the fuels achieve an initial minimum 10% life cycle carbon intensity reduction, increasing to 20% within 10 years. Require the program to include a review and request for additional GREET modeling scenarios from Argonne National Laboratory. Remove language containing examples of ways in which electric public utilities, state agencies, and state authorities may direct at least 40% of their overall credit value to electrified transportation programs, projects, or investments to directly benefit overburdened communities as required under the bill. Remove a provision that would have authorized the DEP to include mechanisms whereby producers of alternative fuel may voluntarily opt into the program to generate credits when the fuel use displaces the combustion of gasoline or diesel for a non-transportation use, and instead require the credits to be related to the displacement of a fuel that is used for transportation. Provide that co-processed fuel, which is produced by blending biomass-based feedstocks with petroleum in refineries, may be considered low carbon for the purposes of the bill. Prohibit persons from banking low transportation fuel credits with the intent of manipulating market supply. Establish penalties for violations of the bill's provisions. Authorize the DEP to recommend to the legislature adjustments to the fuel carbon intensity requirements of the program. Direct the DEP to establish an alternative compliance payment system. Direct the DEP to establish an anonymous reporting program through which whistleblowers can report potential violations of the bill's provisions. Direct the DEP to conduct a fuel impact study every 3 years to evaluate the program's effect on fuel prices, credit market stability, and economic feasibility, and to make other technical corrections to the bill.
Assemblyman McCoy? So used to saying Assemblyman, excuse me, ladies.
We'll let you go this
I
time.
think we're outnumbered.
Get after new chairman, totally fine.
Assemblywoman from now on.
And you know what, actually, when I was sitting out in the audience, I'm looking to my right, and so I have to say to my colleagues, Happy Women's History Month. It is great to see this dominant on this side, Chairman. So thank you so much to my colleagues. Happy Monday to each and every one of you. I am Assemblywoman Tennille McCoy, and so I come before you on today to urge your support in Assembly Bill 3645, which establishes a low-carbon transportation fuel standard program within the Department of Environmental Protection. And this is more than just the environmental initiative. It is forward-thinking policy that positions New Jersey as a leader in sustainable transportation and economic growth. Transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in our state, accounting for nearly 40% of the total emissions. Without targeted interventions, our efforts to combat climate change and improve air quality will fall short. And so a low carbon transportation fuel standard is essential to be able to drive down those emissions while fostering innovation and economic opportunity. So this approach already proven successful in states like California, Oregon, and Washington, where similar programs have reduced carbon intensity without disrupting the fuel markets. And so the benefits of this bill is it has multi-levels. And so first and foremost, it's significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by requiring refineries and wholesalers and producers of transportation fuels to meet very stringent carbon intensity standards. And so this ensures that the fuels used in New Jersey are cleaner and more sustainable, pushing the industry to invest in renewable alternatives such as biofuels, hydrogen, and electricity. And so second, this bill is an economic driver by making sure that we prioritize the use of waste products such as municipal solid waste, agriculture residues, and industrial emissions as feedstock for alternative fuels. We create new industries and jobs. And so, as many of you know, I am a human resources executive, and so building talent pipelines is my bread and butter. And I think it's always super important to make sure that we are creating sustainable jobs. From construction to forestry, from clean energy startups to infrastructure development, I think this is a ripple effect of this policy will be felt across multiple sectors, and it's an investment in New Jersey's workforce and in our economy as a whole. So moreover, this bill will prioritize the public's health. So communities that have long suffered from exposure to high levels of air pollution, particularly those near highways, industrial hubs, will see the tangible benefits. And I think this is something that each and every one of us, we think about every single day. So lower emissions mean cleaner air, leading to fewer respiratory illnesses and improved overall well-being, especially for those who are most vulnerable within our community. I think we all know someone that may have asthma or some other health condition that I think this would be particularly helpful to our community. So importantly, A 3645 is built on a science-based technology, a neutral foundation. It also it does not pick winners or losers. but instead it allows the market to determine the best pathways for achieving the emissions reductions by linking our program to successful initiatives in other states. New Jersey can seamlessly integrate into a broader network of carbon reduction efforts and ensuring efficiencies and competitiveness. So I recognize the change is never easy. Guys, I understand that. But we must take action with urgency. This is not a time for kind of the incremental steps. That time has already passed for us. I think with this bill, we're taking very decisive steps and actions to address climate change, to stimulate our economic growth, and protect our public health. And so I urge you all to support 3645, position New Jersey at the forefront of sustainable transportation solutions. Let's seize this opportunity to create a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous future for our state. So thank you to my colleagues. I really appreciate you guys allowing me this time to talk to each and every one of you. And we have a full room today, and so I thank those who are here and within this committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi, colleague.
Hi, how are you?
Would you mind if I asked a
Yeah,
couple of questions on
yeah,
this?
absolutely.
And, you know, I think everybody wants to see, you know, lower emissions and decrease our carbon footprint and everything. I know this is modeled after California legislation, and I was in California actually in August, and I saw gas for over $7 a gallon. And the concern I have with something like this is, you know, at what cost do we bring on these standards? Everybody's complaining about buying a $6 jar of mayonnaise, and if you add this and costs skyrocket for fuel, what is that going to do for the economy here? You know, the cost of things that are already, you know, people are being stretched. You know, have we looked at other alternatives that may be able to accomplish the same thing, like unleaded 88, which would, you know, be a lower emission fuel that could go into any vehicle and maybe accomplish the same thing at a much lower cost? And I'm sorry for the pop quiz, but
No. And look, I think one of the things, and what I stated earlier, is making sure that we have safer and healthier communities. And I think that we have to look at this and look at the individuals, look at your neighbor, look at your children, look at your family members who are, you know, going through certain health conditions. We have to make sure that we provide our communities with the necessary tools and resources to be successful, but to also live a good quality of life. And so yes, we can look at all the other alternatives, but I think what I said earlier about, you know, not picking and choosing, but I think we have to really take a forceful step forward in making sure that we are fighting this climate change and we're looking at things at a deeper level. So yes, looking at other states, but looking at other alternatives is something that has to be at the top of our agenda. And I think it's really important for us to be able to work across the aisle and partner, because this is not something that is a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This is a human issue that we want to be able to work together and making sure that we have a standard here in New Jersey.
right, and that's what I'm saying. I want to get something that would have, you know, a benefit without a tremendous upheaval in another area. So we gain something and we lose something. And trust me, I've been driving a hybrid for 20 years before it was fashionable. In fact, I would put in goose droppings in my car if it would make it run. I have no deep-seated affinity for fossil fuels, but there is a reality, you know, that we have economics here, we have a price structure and things like that. So when I see something like this, you know, you have to ask yourself, well, can we accomplish the same thing but through a different venue maybe? And so if there are alternatives that may work, maybe that's the way to go. So, you know, I'll let it go at there, and I think it's a worthy, you know, noble quest, but I think we have to weigh all of the, you know, the downside and, you know, whatever benefits are here. But
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate your time.
Okay, I have a little message here. We have a lot of people that want to speak, so we have a 2-minute time limit, so keep that in mind. Okay, so we have a group effort here. Christina Garango, probably butchered that one, but Christina, you here? Liat Carlisle, and Tim Zink. And if I mispronounce your name, you can correct it.
Good afternoon, Christina Cornejo. I know, it's, don't worry, I still have friends that can't pronounce it, so. And if you can't roll the R's, Cornejo, so, I'm used to both pronunciations. Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair Sumter, and fellow members of the Assembly Environment, Natural Resources, and Solid Waste Committee. For the record, my name is Christina Cornejo, and I'm Senior Public Affairs Manager for Neste. I am here in strong support of A3645, the Low Carbon Transportation Fuel Standard. To give you a little background on our company, Neste began as an oil refiner and made the transition to renewable fuels over 15 years ago. Today, we are the world's largest producer of renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. Currently, transportation emissions in New Jersey account for almost 40% of total emissions, as we just heard with Assemblywoman McCoy. A low-carbon fuel standard is an essential policy that will enable the state to meet its bold and necessary decarbonization goals while reducing air and water pollution. The hallmark, as you heard just a minute ago, is its tech neutrality that allows for customers to decide what fuels work best for them and their businesses. All transportation fuels can partake in a clean fuels market, and the policy is flexible enough to grow with New Jersey and allow for new technologies that will come online in the future. A low carbon fuel standard is the most effective policy that we see in reducing carbon emissions from the transportation sector by incentivizing production and availability of lower carbon fuels. The state of New Jersey deserves access to cleaner fuels and protection of its treasured natural resources. A3645 is a significant piece of the decarbonization puzzle, and we at Neste are proud to support this pivotal policy. I greatly appreciate the bill sponsors of A3645 and members of this committee for listening to our testimony here today, and I humbly ask for you to vote yes on this piece of legislation.
Right on the button. You must have timed that. Okay. Who's next for 2 minutes?
I'll go. Hi, thank you, Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chair Sumter, and members of the committee for your time today. Clean Fuel New Jersey has spent about 3 years listening, learning, engaging, and educating community members and stakeholders on clean fuel policy and the opportunity for a clean fuel standard in New Jersey. This policy is unique as it makes both economic and environmental sense. It really works. This is proven and effective at reducing emissions in the most highly polluted transportation corridors in the most economically efficient way. The west coast of the United States and all of Canada is reliant on this program for their immediate decarbonization efforts. This is not a mandate, but rather it is a well-understood market that carefully incentivizes cleaner fuels. This program creates both job opportunities and sustainability for aviation, maritime, long-haul trucking, rail, and it is critical for the entire electrification effort. And that means cleaner air and cleaner water. The Clean Fuel Standard is in line with everything that we are talking about today. Boiled down, this is about economic prosperity and the environment. This policy addresses both of those concerns, and it is written to ensure that the implementation benefits the communities who need access to renewables the most. We all know that transportation is the single largest source of emissions in New Jersey and in North America. This policy is the single most effective at decarbonizing the transportation that has ever been adopted. Young people are focused on preserving the environment because we do not have a choice. This is the crisis of my generation, and I, like many others in the room, have dedicated my life to this cause. I also know that the best way to make progress is to make it financially feasible and affordable. There is no perfect solution to climate change. Whether it's CapEx, OpEx, permitting, or politics, nothing alone can solve this crisis. But the Clean Fuel Standard, as a technology-neutral option, offers a place for all decarbonization efforts to continue to innovate while we implement best available technologies. Thank you for your time, and I humbly ask you to vote yes.
Exactly. Well, you guys are good. You got stopwatches on?
No pressure.
This is a test. The last one's a man.
Yeah, well,
Let's see what you can do.
thank you for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Tim Zank, and I'm the Managing Director of Earth Finance, Transportation Innovation and Decarbonization Practice. For 2 decades, I've worked on the development of policy at a national and subnational level, which when implemented, sends strong market signals to decarbonize transportation, unleashing American innovation to build the supply and demand necessary to establish a low-carbon fuels network. These programs are the scaffolding you need to decarbonize economically and control your own destiny. Already 4 states together, representing the 4th largest economy in the world, have implemented these standards. They are absolutely required to decarbonize trucking, aviation, light-duty vehicles, and marine. Without this policy, you won't have the foundation necessary to succeed independently of federal resources. Let's look at the results in Washington, Oregon, California by the numbers. The Clean Fuel Standards market have eliminated nearly 200 million metric tons. That's equal to 43 million vehicles off the road of CO2. The cleaner air has resulted in saving thousands of lives by eliminating these petroleum emissions in this part of the United States. It has displaced over 4 billion gallons of petroleum since its implementation 15 years ago. Hydrogen production has quadrupled in the region. 3,200 DC fast chargers were built at over 500 locations as a result of the Clean Fuel Standard. 300 million was invested in public transit as a result of the Clean Fuel Standard. In one city, the city of Anaheim, Disneyland, established its first ever transit system. They didn't have one. Disneyland did it all for them. And they did it with 100% renewable energy as a result of the Clean Fuel Standard. And $1 billion was invested in light-duty ZEV programs. So I could go on, and which I don't intend to do, but I appreciate your opportunity to speak to you.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions for seeing them? They're afraid of you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Anthony Willington. Anthony? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Greetings, members of the committee and staff. I'm Anthony Willingham, the State Government Affairs Manager at Electrify America, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of a low-carbon fuel standard in New Jersey. Briefly about Electrify America, we're one of the largest providers of direct current fast chargers in the country. We have almost 5,000 chargers across 1,000 stations in North America. And in New Jersey, our network has about 30 stations and 130 chargers, with more underway. Electrify America strongly supports the adoption of a low-carbon fuel standard in New Jersey. Such a policy is perhaps the single most effective means of reducing carbon emissions from the transportation sector and growing the clean fuels industry, especially electricity as a transportation fuel. A clean fuel standard helps the fast charging industry by generating an invaluable amount of investment in new and existing infrastructure. For Electrify America, the LCFS credit market has helped finance upgrades to existing stations and the construction of new ones with capacity and speeds necessary to meet the charging demands of today and the future. At a time when the charging landscape is rapidly changing, the industry is looking to jurisdictions to create safe, stable, and attractive regulatory environments in which to invest. And New Jersey adopting a low-carbon fuel standard does just that. This policy is a proven and robust step forward for the state's clean energy and climate goals and is critical to the reduction of emissions from the transportation sector and to the widespread adoption of electric vehicles. New Jersey is part of a growing list of jurisdictions that are taking significant steps towards adopting a clean transportation standard, and Electrify America strongly supports New Jersey being the first state on the East Coast to do so. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to testify and happy to answer any questions. And if I could go off script for a moment, there's good answers and good data to the question of what clean fuel standard, the impact of clean fuel standard has on gas prices that I am happy to share with the committee or talk about further. Thank you.
Any questions? You're free to go. Next, we have Eric DeGuessero.
Chairman Kennedy, members of the committee, Eric DeGuessero here, wearing two different hats, so I'm not going to ask for 4 minutes though. On behalf of the New Jersey Propane Gas Association representing propane distributors, the draft amendments that we've seen recognize the fact that renewable propane is a byproduct of the production of renewable diesel, and thank you for its inclusion. On behalf of the Fuel Merchants Association, who represent motor fuel and heating fuel distributors, I've seen two different sets of amendments, so I just want to make sure that we're clear what the association's position is. Diesel for trucks is the same fuel as it is for farmers using farm equipment, as it is for construction vehicles using construction equipment, as it is for heating oil that heats your home and business. When you drive down the turnpike and see one of those big, beautiful tanks, the fuel in that tank is the base fuel. So when one of my drivers goes up and pushes the button and says, I want a load of diesel fuel, the diesel fuel comes out of the big tank, through the pipes, and the split second before it goes into the truck, it's sprinkled with a little pixie dust to become diesel for on-road transportation. Driver delivers that fuel, comes back, makes the exact same route, comes back to pick up a load of heating oil or fuel for farm equipment, and pushes a different code, same fuel, same tank, same pipes, different pixie dust, and then is distributed for that purpose. So we would like to ensure that off-road applications, 65% of the fuel in that tank goes to on-road diesel, 35% goes for all of the other uses. So our position is, since you're going to be, and you're not going to build a separate tank for the off-road uses, you're just going to have all of that renewable diesel or whatever that alternative fuel is in that big tank. So let's recognize that if we're going to mandate it from 65%, you're going to get the benefit for the other 35%, and all off-road applications should be included as an opt-in, and I thank you, Chairman, for your time.
Thank you. 7 seconds left. Ray Cantor, NJBIA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ray Cantor. I am with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. NJBIA very much wants to support this bill. We want to support the concept of low carbon fuel standards. We have been working with the advocates of this legislation for probably close to 2 years now to try to get to a place where we think it's going to work. You know, we represent lots of people who are businesses who are going to be impacted, from the refiners to the distributors to the users of these products. This, to my mind, is one of the most complicated bills that we have dealt with in this committee. It's not a matter of whether or not we're in favor of the concept, whether or not we think it's a good idea or not. The devil really is very much in this bill, in the details, and we are not convinced at this point in time that we have the details right. I know there are a lot of amendments that were put forth today. I've spoken to Assemblyman Calabrese on Friday about the process going forward, and we know this bill is going to be second referenced, and we support that because, again, the details matter. We all want to make sure that there's no unfair competitive advantage between different companies to this bill. We all want to make sure that the costs at the pump are not going to be exorbitant, as Assemblyman Scharfenberger had mentioned. We all want to make sure that we reduce emissions. So again, the language matters. So we thank you for posting the bill here today. We support the bill moving through the process, but we very much care about the language. We very much care about whether or not the bill does what we all think it should do and want it to do. And again, we very much want to be able to support the bill. We look forward to working with the sponsors as this bill moves through the legislative process. Thank you very much.
Next we have John DePersonaire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John DePersonaire. I work for the Viking Marine Group. We're a boat builder down in New Gretna, New Jersey. We've been building boats in New Jersey for the past 60 years. We currently employ over 2,000 employees. The marine industry represents just a small fraction of the greenhouse gas emissions, less than 0.7% of the total domestic transportation sector and less than 1% globally. Yet, we have a huge economic impact. So in New Jersey alone, it's a $6.6 billion a year industry. We employ over 20,000 jobs in the state. I want to point out that the marine industry is very committed to reducing emissions and developing cleaner engines and exploring all possible options for that. In fact, just over the past 20 years, marine engine emissions have been reduced by 90%, while efficiency has increased by 40%. Decarbonization in the recreational marine industry represents a unique challenge. The primary reason is that water is 800 times more dense than air, so it presents a real challenge for us. An example of that is we build boats that are designed to fish 60, 70 miles offshore, and there's just not electric battery capacity right now to move a boat out there, fish all day, and return to the dock. It's just not possible right now. So we really believe that these liquid fuels, these low carbon liquid fuels, are going to be the pathway for us to decarbonize over the next few decades at least. So I appreciate what the standard's trying to do, and I've not had a chance to look at the amendments, but I do have some just general comments. So we like this concept. The definition of the alternative fuels did not include gasoline or diesel, and as several speakers have pointed out, these have been used in California and other states. I think what I'll do is I'll probably go through the amendments and I'll submit written comments, if that's okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Brett Barry.
Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chairwoman Sumter, and members of the committee. My name is Brett Barry. I'm the Policy Director for Clean Energy. We're North America's largest provider of renewable natural gas in the transportation sector. I'm here to voice my support today for the legislation to establish a low-carbon transportation fuel standard. It is the strongest policy a state can implement to address transportation sector emissions and has a proven track record of achieving tangible results. In California, this policy has resulted in the displacement of over 60% of diesel fuel. I had to check that several times because I didn't even believe that, but they've displaced over 60% of their diesel fuel as a result of this program. The overwhelming majority of this diesel displacement was made possible by biofuels. Renewable natural gas is primarily created by capturing harmful fugitive emissions from agricultural waste and then turning it into a clean vehicle fuel. From a climate perspective, the California Air Resources Board has certified RNG as the only carbon negative fuel based on its weighted average, because we're actually removing fugitive emissions from agricultural operations from ever going into the atmosphere. Additionally, RNG-powered engines, which are focused in the heavy-duty sector, they're certified to improve local air quality by reducing NOx emissions by 90% and virtually eliminating particulate matter emissions. While this standard will provide strong support for electrification, as we've already heard, it also provides support for biofuels in order to address hard-to-electrify vehicle fleets, thereby ensuring that the most emissions can be reduced today rather than deferring and allowing diesel to continue for decades and decades. Thank you.
You guys are good. Next, we have Danielle Combs.
Greetings, Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chair Sumter, and committee members. My name is Danielle Combs. I'm the Administrative Director of the NAACP New Jersey State Conference. I bring greetings on behalf of President Richard Smith, who is unable to be here with us today, but gives his regards. Being born poor or disadvantaged shouldn't lead to a higher risk of lung cancer, asthma, or heart disease. It shouldn't mean that we have to live near island buses and trucks and near coal-fired plants, spewing dangerous particulates into the air. But sadly, that is still the case in the majority of the areas in the United States, including right here in New Jersey. September 2021, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency releases report on climate change and social vulnerability in the United States, citing numerous projected adverse health impacts on low-income minority groups. For example, it says that Black and African American individuals are 41% to 60% more likely to live in areas with the highest projected increases in premature mortality due to increases in concentrations of particulate matter. Black and African American individuals are 34% more likely to live in areas with the highest projected increases in childhood asthma due to climate-driven changes. Unfortunately, minority communities continue to be impacted disproportionately by air pollution, leading to various illnesses from cardiovascular disease to cancer. In fact, health effects caused by pollution have been found in many cases to impair a child's potential to succeed, with long-term impacts even limiting growth, stability, and family well-being. The NAACP New Jersey State Conference supports this bill, A 3645, which would give the Garden State access to clean transportation fuels and provide immediate environmental benefits to reduce pollution and protect those who need it the most. Overburdened communities do not benefit nearly as much as middle-class communities with anti-pollution environmental laws are enacted. However, this bill addresses the fact that a disproportionate number of pollutants plague these forgotten communities where planes fly overhead, buses idle, and trucks pass by. We applaud Senator John McCain and Bob Smith, as well as Senator Calabrese and Assemblywoman McCoy, the prime sponsors of this bill, who recognize the urgent need to take this action. Let's lead the way in New Jersey. What we can accomplish here will not only lead the way for other states, it will literally save the lives of those who need it most. Thank you for your time and attention.
Stephen Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stephen Dodge. I'm Director of State Regulatory Affairs for Clean Fuels Alliance America. Clean Fuels is the U.S. trade association representing the entire biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel supply, and I'm here to testify in favor of Assembly Bill 3645, although I have to posit some of the amendments, particularly the co-processing amendments. Obviously, I haven't seen that language yet. I just want to remind the committee members that co-processed fuel is not necessarily fossil fuel free or low carbon. While electrification is an important pathway to reducing carbon emissions, it cannot be the only pathway. California, as has been mentioned, has had a low carbon fuel standard program, or LCFS, since 2011. That program, by every measure, has been an incredible success story and a model for other states. Let me just talk about how the LCFS has benefited the diesel engine sector. But a well-designed LCFS will effectively squeeze the carbon out of all liquid transportation fuels and heating fuels. Because of California's program, it is now easier to buy non-fossil diesel for on-road use than it is fossil diesel. Almost 75% of the on-road diesel pool is now fossil fuel-free with no retrofitting of either pumps or vehicles needed. And the other states with LCFS programs in place show similar progress. Made from an increasingly diverse mix of resources such as recycled cooking oil, soybean oil, and animal fats, all waste products, no food for fuel issues, biodiesel and renewable diesel are better, cleaner fuels that are available now for use in existing diesel engines without modification, and most importantly, providing on average a 70% reduction in carbon emissions, not to mention a substantial reduction in other co-pollutants such as particulate matter. While we understand that reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector is absolutely necessary for the state to meet its greenhouse gas reduction goals, clearly the heavy-duty transportation section will be impossible to substantially electrify in the near future. Yet for every 5 years we wait, we must reduce emissions by 13 times to have the same climate impact. So I appreciate this opportunity to testify. I look forward to working with the committee members and others
Mr. Chairman, it's your discretion, but I can probably hone in on that California pricing question if you want me to do that. So, thank you. I'll just say that California prices for gasoline and diesel before the LCFS, after the LCFS, or during the LCFS have been higher because particularly on the gasoline side, California has its own specific formula because of clean air requirements. So that's why gasoline has always been high in California. I can tell you, and you can get this information directly from the CARB website, there has been no increase in either diesel or gasoline prices that have been attributed to the additional costs that are associated with the LCFS program there. Those costs just have not been passed along to consumers. And can't guarantee anything, but the evidence shows that that probably would not be the case here as well. Thank you.
Okay, next we have a little group. Loretta Winters, Diane Keel-Atkins, and Bernadette Mayer. Ladies, the floor is yours. Someone missing?
I don't believe Bernadette intended to testify.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. To the honorable members of this assembly, I stand before you today to emphasize the urgent need for clean air and water and to address the devastating impact of pollution on the health and well-being of New Jersey residents. The consequences of pollutants, particular air emission, oil spills, soil contamination, and industrial runoff are severe, affecting all of us, but disproportionately harming our most vulnerable population, our seniors, low-income families, and most critically, our children. This is not only a public health crisis, but also an economic burden that weighs heaviest on our lower and middle-income communities. Multiple studies confirm the harmful health effects of air and water pollution, especially in urban and industrial areas like Newark, Elizabeth, Trenton, and Camden. These cities, known for some of the worst air qualities in the nation, are home to significant African American, Latino, and low-income population, making environmental justice an imperative one. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States and globally. The American College of Cardiology has established a strong link between pollution, exposure, and adverse cardiovascular outcomes, including heart attacks, arrhythmias, heart failure, aneurysms, strokes, cognitive impairment, peripheral artery disease, chronic kidney disease, and decreased quality of life. These conditions lead to increased morbidity, rising health care costs, and economic instability, ultimately resulting in premature death. According to the American Lung Association 2023 State of the Art report, several New Jersey counties rank among the worst in the nation for air quality due to high ozone levels and fine particulate matters. The major contributors, oil refineries, vehicle emission, and industrial facilities expose our residents to pollutants that cause asthma, chronic obstruction, lung cancer, and lung cancer. Thank you.
My name is Diane Keel-Atkins, and I'm representing today Bishop William T. Cahoon, who is the jurisdictional prelate for the Church of God in Christ and senior bishop in New Jersey. We have 20 churches in 5 counties in New Jersey, and his other responsibilities include leadership for those churches, as well as pastoring 2 of them in Plainfield and in East Orange. Every Sunday, he stands in front of his congregation and sees the faces of people who are tired, not just from the weight of life, but from sickness that they didn't choose. Too many funerals have been held in our churches for people whose lives were taken too soon, mothers, fathers, and even children sitting in hospital rooms, hooked up to machines because their lungs couldn't take it anymore. We pray for healing, but we also seek action. He is asking you as a man of faith and as a leader in these communities to stand up for us, to listen to the cries of people who just want to breathe. This bill won't fix everything, but it's a start, and our people deserve that much. God bless you all. This is from Bishop Cahoon. Now I'm going to take off my Bishop Cahoon's hat, and I'm going to take off my universal chair hat, and I'm just going to talk from a universal grandmother perspective. Regardless of status, station, or ethnicity, people have to live, y'all. People have to live. Insurance, medical health care has to go up when they're in those hospitals. Some of us don't even know. They're not educated about public awareness and environmental pollutants and what's happening in their families. So we haven't kind of done enough preventions. The other thing is nutritions have to change because you've been in the hospital, and therefore your nutrition has to change. And lastly, it's an impact on family economics. Let's face it, it's an impact on family economics. You got medical, you got nutrition, you've got transportation, you've got insurance companies you're fighting. So from a universal grandmother perspective, not from urban initiative chair, not from bishop representation, I've got to deal, my granddaughter is sitting behind here because I wanted her to see the legislative process. But also I thought about, no, she's not exhibit 1 or exhibit 2. No, she came with me. She's here for the weekend, she's in school. So, but I thought about, do we want several more generations to go through this? Do we want several more generations to have to deal with these types of issues? And our families in New Jersey, we've got to pass this bill. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to us, taking the time. This is really important to, not just to all New Jerseyans, but especially to our community where it's impacted most. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we have David Pringle, opposed, no need to testify. Oh, he wants to change your mind?
I'm testifying. Maybe, and sometimes some people do that on my behalf, but I like to have my voice.
Okay, Doug O'Malley and Isabella Moha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Pringle, representing Empower New Jersey, the state's largest climate coalition of faith, business, labor, community, environmental groups. We do oppose the bill as introduced. We haven't seen the amendments. Disappointed that they weren't available to us before today. But even with the amendments, the bill can't be fixed. It can only be made less bad. We know the sponsors and many of the testifiers, especially the non-industry testifiers, have good intention, but the bill is nevertheless a bad result. I haven't had a chance to speak with Assemblywoman McCoy other than a brief conversation after she testified just now, but we have spoken with the prime sponsors, Assemblywoman Calabrese, Senator Smith, and Senator McKeon, where our understanding the bill wasn't going to be moving anytime soon, so we are unpleasantly surprised to see it up today. And among other things, they cited environmental justice concerns in why it wasn't going to move anytime quick. And the problem with the bill is it's not clean. It's not low carbon. It's not peak carbonation, even if it was done perfectly. In part because it can't cut emissions to the level. You can't burn carbon and cut emissions to the level we need to if you believe in climate science. And that's if it's done perfectly, and we know it won't be done perfectly. There's also, it's impossible, this bill is focused on carbon. It ignores co-pollutants, SOx, NOx, particulates, the ones that disproportionately impact overburdened communities. And that isn't about global problems or long decades times of climate change. These are the pollutants that kill people every day based on the emissions that happen at any given second and make people further sick and increase healthcare costs. For perspective, we need to cut emissions by 80%. This bill will not cut transportation emissions, even for the things that are covered, anywhere near 80%, again, if done perfectly. We know it's hard, it will take time, it will take effort, but the solution is other things like electric vehicles, cleaning the grid, hydrogen when it's done properly for very narrow circumstances, but it certainly isn't. We have to stop burning carbon in cars if we want a future for our grandchildren. Thank you. And this bill burns carbon in cars.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Doug O'Malley, Director of Environment New Jersey and a steering member of Empower New Jersey, summarize, a lot of the concerns from the environmental community with this bill, because this bill ultimately is a bill where the remedy is worse than the problem. And I think it's really critical to look at the experience in California, because obviously this committee has heard one source of one side of the argument. The Climate Center for Energy Studies, which is based out of the University of Pennsylvania, issued a report last October outlining some of the real concerns with this program in California. That includes prioritizing biofuels over electrification. It includes the fact that biofuels have real environmental harms, as well as retail pricing impacts. And I wanted to focus actually on one of the top line findings of that report, which is the fact that 80% of the revenue from the California Low Carbon Fuel Standard has gone to biofuel and biofuel producers since 2013. And I think it's also critical to look at the organizations that are opposing the Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California. There were actually amendments from the Natural Resources Defense Council outlining their concerns on these exact issues, on the over-counting of credits from biofuels, on not looking at the true carbon impacts, and also at the fact that some of these solutions actually can make air pollution worse. It's also critical to know that there's two active litigation against this program right now, one of them coming from the environmental justice community. So there are real issues with the California program, and I wanted just to end here by just emphasizing that when we look at ethanol, which was kind of in the air of the push to move towards ethanol 2 decades ago, we kind of remember that. This was the green fuel. Well, it turns out, and Mark Jacobson from Stanford University has testified to this, as well as an article in Proceedings of National Academy, ethanol produces more air pollution than traditional gasoline. So again, this is a case where the remedy is worse than the solution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy, members of the committee. My name is Isabel Molina. I'm the Environmental Justice Policy Manager at New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. We're the statewide political voice in the environment, and we work to reduce emissions, to protect our natural resources, and also to protect public health, all through good policy. So we'll take some time to look through the amendments, but at this juncture, we do have to oppose A 4645. New Jersey LCD at one point in time was exploring this policy because it has potential, it does, particularly in hard to electrify sectors like aviation, which you can't fully electrify. However, we knew we needed to set a monumental policy around environmental justice. Without provisions that ensure climate and health benefits go towards every New Jersey community, especially environmental justice communities, we can't support the bill. And frankly, when this bill was introduced, it did not include those provisions from environmental justice communities with the input of environmental justice communities and leaders. We're not the voices to tell these communities who suffer the most from poor air quality what these provisions could look like. They should be the ones making those decisions, because good policy making can't be done in a vacuum. This bill was drafted again without significant feedback prior to its introduction, and we chose not to support this particular low carbon fuel standard legislation for that reason. And so while there may be some amendments that suggest that there are environmental justice provisions, I think it's always really important to consider who's putting in these provisions and what input we got from them, from the communities themselves, if they want these amendments. So while we can discuss the policy of alternative fuels specific to especially hard to electrify areas of the transportation sector, like aviation, good and just policies must include a leadership seat at the table for justice-based groups most impacted by burning fossil fuels, especially environmental justice leaders in this space, and any bill on this topic should include their input from the outset. Today, we urge you not to vote yes on this bill without the support and robust discussion with environmental justice leaders. Thank you.
Any questions? Ready to go. Okay, next we have Colin Hartz. Eric Lundgren and Charles Lawson.
My name is Colin Parks. I'm an attorney with Earth Justice, and Earth Justice does not support 83645. This legislation does not ensure that New Jersey can achieve its climate goals and may exacerbate disproportionate pollution burdens in overburdened communities. This LCFS bill runs the risk of diverting resources away from the least cost, zero-emission transportation scenario, and instead towards costly false solutions like combustion biofuels. Recent studies show that combustion biofuels have twice the methane emissions as previously reported, and could potentially leak 4 times more methane as oil and gas supply chains. And 20% biodiesel blended fuels can emit more NOx, more hydrocarbon, and more carbon monoxide compared to conventional diesel, with no comparable reduction in particulate matter emissions. A lot of people talked about California, so let's talk about it. California's LCFS program is a warning because it's been a disaster. To date, 80% of LCFS funding has gone to combustion biofuels rather than electric vehicles. The California program incentivizes hydrogen made by fossil fuels over hydrogen made from zero-emission sources. Former staff at the California Air Resources Board, which oversaw the program, highlighted that the program actually allowed special interest groups to bend the program to their economic advantage at the expense of affordability for low-income residents. CARB's own Environmental Justice Advisory Committee passed a resolution finding that the low-carbon fuel standard has exacerbated and entrenched air, water, and odor pollution in communities most impacted by environmental injustices. LCFS is the wrong answer. Instead, we need policies that drive zero-emission transportation and that are targeted to exactly where the most transportation emissions happen. We'll later talk about the indirect source rule. That bill would be exactly that. It requires real emission reductions, it leverages rapid gains in zero-emission technology, and major manufacturers are already investing billions in zero-emission vehicles. Because the proposed clean fuel standard is not consistent with New Jersey's climate and environmental justice goals, and due to the viability of zero-emission technologies, we oppose this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Weinberg from the New Jersey Gas and Convenience Store Association. We have concerns with the legislation. I think there are some positive elements to it, but our main concern is just that it will increase the cost of gasoline and diesel in the state. California Air Resources Board itself has estimated the impact of their program in 2024 added about 12 cents a gallon to the cost of gas and 14 cents a gallon to the cost of diesel, which is an analysis that is roughly backed up by 2 other independent groups studying the program. Now, admittedly, that cost is over the course of more than a decade that the program's been in effect. Over the course of a year, you'll see the price of gas swing 75 cents a gallon, but those are because of market conditions that affect the whole country. Our concern is our state's position relative to our neighboring states. Right now, our total tax on gasoline is about the same as New York's and only 14 cents lower than Pennsylvania's. And as you'll recall, about a year ago, the state increased the petroleum products gross receipts tax as a phased-in increase, so that'll increase the cost of gas and diesel by about another 10 cents over the next 4 years. Also, we're about 30 cents a gallon more expensive on our diesel tax than Delaware is, and that's going to go up by another 10 cents. Also, unlike our neighbors, New Jersey has a legal mandate that requires every gallon of gas sold in the state to be pumped by a paid station employee, which is the largest single operating expense for a station. It increases the cost of gas here, but not in our neighboring states. I think the simplest way to address this concern would be to amend the bill to say that the program would only actually be implemented upon the passage of similar legislation in our neighboring states, which would also guarantee that there was a genuine, large enough market for those fuels in the area. The main question we have is what exactly the cost of increase is going to be. If there's going to be money coming out of it for subsidies for cleaner fuels, then that money is coming from somewhere, and that cost is going to be passed on from the refiners to the distributors, to the retailers, and ultimately to the motorists. We were happy to see a change in the deadline to 5% by 2030, given the 18 months of implementation. That would only leave about 3 years to actually get the program going, which is a requirement that could artificially cause it to go up. We have more concerns. There's also some positive elements in the bill that we would like to see move forward. We'd just like to see a cost containment mechanism. I have more details about that in the testimony I submitted.
Questions? Next, we have Rachel Bain, Kate Delaney, and Matt Smith.
Chair and committee members for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Matt Smith. I'm the New Jersey Director with Food and Water Watch, representing our 74,000 members and supporters in the state. And we are strongly opposed to the low carbon fuel standard, S2425. And I was really moved by a lot of the speakers before me, particularly those living in overburdened pollution communities. There is no question that we are in a crisis, both a climate crisis and a crisis of public health, and the ways that air pollution impact that. The only question is, what are the policies that are actually going to deliver the results that we need to alleviate the suffering, the death, and the costs that this pollution is having on our lives? And this bill just is simply not that. We have good legislative record in the state of California, which had implemented a low carbon fuel standard program. As speakers before me have said, the California's own Air Resources Board estimated that amending their program to achieve their objectives would increase the cost of gasoline and by nearly 50, will cost drivers still dependent on gasoline or diesel vehicles nearly 50 cents per gallon in 2025 and approximately $1.80 per gallon by 2040. And that's not adjusted for inflation. Also, the technology neutral approach. That may sound reasonable and mundane, but in practice, it can result in blinkered analysis and the acceptance of these alternative fuels that have dubious climate benefits and or established co-pollutant issues, such as harm to local air or water quality from fuel production. In California, we've also seen the program provide greater incentive for combusting fuels than solar and wind. In fact, under the California program, which the New Jersey bill is modeled off of, burning factory farm gas in an internal combustion engine to produce electricity is treated as more climate friendly than fueling an EV directly from a zero emission source such as solar or wind. I have more, but I will respect the time and urge this committee to vote down this legislation. Instead, we should be pursuing real solutions for climate and environmental justice in New Jersey. Thank you.
Okay, now just a few more. No need to testify. Robert, oh, I don't have to read them. Oh, I didn't see the bottom part of that note. I don't have to read these. So if you're in there, you're not going to hear your name. Motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay.
On the motion to amend and release Assembly Bill number 3645, Assemblyman Scharfenberger?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we sat here and we heard California has been very successful, they've had great success, and California has been, quote, a disaster. I'm not a technician or, I'm not that schooled in this sort of thing. It's very difficult to make a decision when there's so much wide disagreement on this. And certainly my concern is the cost and the ripple effect on the economy and jobs and business here. And all of these things that, while it's part of the equation, it's a very important part. And I'm going to abstain. Somebody had said that they have good data on prices in California and how it affected. So I think these are things that we all have to look for before we can make an informed judgment and decision on this particular bill. There seems to be so many varied opinions. So that's my long-winded way of saying I'm going to abstain.
Assemblyman Ganamore?
Thank you very much. As was said by some of the folks who spoke, this is a very technical bill, and it has some good elements in it. Ultimately, though, I think the net is that a mandate like this leads to higher costs. Not just on the fuel. We heard varying numbers for the increase in California. I heard 12 cents on gasoline, 14 cents on diesel. Then at the end, I thought I heard 50 cents. Heard a few different variations on that, but also the increase in costs on the goods that are transported via a higher cost fuel. So we can all disagree over whether or not that higher fuel costs are a good thing or not, but I think it should be a factor in our decision making. It is in mine, and that's why I'm saying it out loud. I feel that increasing the price at the pump and at the store, when New Jerseyans are already paying more at the pump and at the store, when we are staring at a potential national recession, when New Jerseyans already have the highest tax burden in the United States of America, is the wrong thing, so I am a no. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Katz?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hall?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Colasso Skill?
I'm going to vote yes on this bill, but I do now understand, the disparity on this information, but I am hearing all of the testimony that happened on both ends, and I do understand the intent, and I really do like it, and I'm really excited that we can move forward on this. So my vote is yes, but I'm just hearing every end.
Vice Chair Sumter?
Thank you. Through the chair, to do nothing is not an option. We're a decade behind when we talked about California, and we talked about where New Jersey is. California having more experience, of course we have more information to look at. To the sponsors, I give them credit for introducing this bill in 2024, having countless meetings to get here with the amendments that have been included, so I would encourage you, those who testified today, to read the amendments. I understand some of you did not have the opportunity to do that, but also to meet with all the sponsors of the bill. Also, environmental justice does not belong to any one group. As the sponsor who was here, Assemblywoman McCoy, mentioned, it's not Republican or Democrat. We also must consider the disparities that impact select communities that are concentrated with minorities, and we can't sweep that under the rug as if they don't understand policy and the policy that impacts them and the change that's needed in those communities. And this bill is an attempt at dealing with some of those disparities with policy. Cost is not just cost at the pump, but cost for health care, cost for diseases and conditions that are life impacting that we ultimately as a community end up paying for with the loss of life, with the contraction of asthma, lung cancer, and disease at higher rates in concentrated communities. So we can't just look at it costs a couple more cents at the pump to not have cleaner fuel. So I'm voting yes to move this bill out of committee, where I know I would speak with the sponsors to make sure the environmental communities as a whole meets with the sponsors to talk through some of the amendments and also look at some of the reports from California. But again, they're 10 years ahead of us and making some of these reforms. And lastly, as we all know, no legislation is perfect. We do our best to do the best that we can with the information that we have, but to do nothing is not an option today. Yes?
Chairman Kennedy?
Yes.
The bill is released. Number 4696 as amended, Climate Superfund Act imposes liability on certain fossil fuel companies for certain damages caused by climate change and establishes program in DEP to collect and distribute compensatory payments. The proposed committee amendments to the bill just make a technical change to the bill.
Okay, Ben Hager, in favor? Ben Bors, in favor? And Brian Thompson, in favor?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chair Sumter, and committee members. My name is Ben Hagan. I'm the Director of Policy at ISLES. ISLES has served the state of New Jersey for 42 years as a community development and environmental nonprofit, working to foster self-reliant families and healthy, sustainable communities. Throughout those 42 years, we have been focused on revitalizing communities, training and educating youth and adults for work and life, building wealth for families, and fostering green and healthy neighborhoods. At ISLES, right here in Trenton, we work side by side with the community, in their homes and in their schools, where they work and where they play. We see the outcome and the legacy of pollution. The burdens of these extreme events are disproportionately felt by low and moderate income communities. Harmful impacts from more frequent and severe extremes are increasing. What is harmful to all is amplified in communities with limited resources with truncated options. These events cause direct economic losses through infrastructure damage, disruptions in labor and public services, and losses in property value. The number and cost of weather-related disasters have increased dramatically over the past 4 decades, in part due to the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme events, and in part due to increases in the assets at risk, through population growth, rising property values, and continued development in hazard-prone areas. Low-income communities experience high exposure and vulnerability to extreme events due to both their proximity to hazard-prone areas and a lack of adequate infrastructure and disaster management resources. These impacts, combined with other stressors, are leading to ripple effects across sectors and regions that multiply harms with disproportionate effects on underserved and overburdened communities. Revenue from this cost recovery program will help New Jersey communities avoid, mitigate, repair, or adapt to the negative impacts from these harms. ILS also works side by side with business. We support free enterprise and social entrepreneurship and accountability. Under 4696, the companies responsible for the greenhouse gas pollution will simply be asked to pay to clean up for the contaminated sites. We urge you to release 4696 so that we and all the communities across our great state may breathe a little easier. Thank you.
Hello, Councilman Ben Forrest. I've met some of you before, Chairman. Vice Chair Sumter, I believe, I've met you before. Yeah, a little bit, thank you. Our town passed a resolution supporting this, so I'm here in that capacity. I happen to be also a member of, a board member of Clean Water Action, which is here in force today, among many others. We've been grappling with climate change for a while, actually, in Red Bank. I was on the Board of Education for 19 years before serving on the council. And we have a school close to the water, like every other community. These various complex and expensive issues are a threat to our town, on our quality of life, and our taxpayers. So I think holding those somewhat responsible for this, as opposed to my property taxpayers, or you, is a good concept. And it's one of the reasons as a councilman I certainly supported this. Climate change, despite rumors otherwise, it seems to be real. Things are changing. I'm concerned that FEMA and some of the agencies that Red Bank has used in the past to fix for school, for example, I'm not quite sure what kind of state they're going to be in going forward, as we have significant changes on the federal level. So I do support this bill, and I urge you to vote yes. And of course, if you have any questions or comments to me, I'm more than happy to take them.
I will lean in. And good afternoon, my name is Brian Thompson. I'm a Monmouth Beach Environmental Commissioner, member of the Beyond Plastic National Advisory Board. And in deference to the committee, I'll take off my MAGA hat, which also says, Make America Green Again. Kind of a bipartisan hat, if you will, or a all-partisan hat, because we all want a green environment, I think. You take a town like Middletown, Assemblyman, beautiful, beautiful community with plenty of tree coverage, and I know they had a very vicious, significant battle with, I think it was PSE&G, over high power lines down the NJ Transit Railroad tracks a few years ago, in which the community won. I come here to tell you that in my town of Monmouth Beach, we are still recovering from the after effects of Sandy now 12 and a half years later. We still have some derelict properties that are contributing very little to the property tax base of our community. And when it comes down to dollars and cents, when we say green means, green policy means green dollars, the taxpayer is the one who hurts here. I can't tell you as a member of the Environmental Commission how many hours that we have spent and how many hours our borough administration has spent, and we're a small borough, so we don't have a lot of administration, spent in looking at ways to mitigate the effects of climate change and flooding in our community. The kind of flooding that we saw, yes, during Sandy, and the kind of flooding we see 2, 3, 4 times a year now that takes over our streets, putting in new drainage system, for example. Rain garden talk, and other communities are doing exactly the same thing. This hurts the taxpayer. The taxpayer has to pay for this, and quite frankly, I think that's unfair. So I strongly encourage you to advance this legislation, not just for the environment, but for the taxpayer. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll put my hat back on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we have Antoinette Miles, Sylvian Gibbon, and Ashley Profesky.
Good afternoon, Chair Kennedy, Vice Chair Sumter, and members of the committee. My name is Siobhan Gibbons, and I live in North Brunswick and a member of the North Brunswick Environment Commission, and also a member of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey's Natural Resources Committee. And I am here to express the League's strong support for the New Jersey Climate Superfund Act, A4696. This critical piece of legislation holds fossil fuel companies accountable for the damage they have caused to our climate, our environment, and our communities. My community in North Brunswick, like many others, has experienced the cost of climate change firsthand. Our municipal building was severely damaged in Hurricane Ida, and we just got back into the building just a couple of months ago. Municipalities like North Brunswick are amongst those on the front line having to deal with and pay for the damage caused by climate change. So to help advance this important bill, I am actively participating in the campaign that was already mentioned to encourage municipal councils to pass resolutions in support of this Climate Superfund Act. And I've spoken to our town council, as have many over in the 12 municipalities that have already passed resolutions supporting this bill. And over 20 other municipalities are discussing resolutions or in the process. Events like Hurricane Ida will occur more frequently thanks to climate change. So I urge you to join me in supporting A4696, the Climate Superfund Act. It's time for New Jersey to take bold action and demand that polluters pay their fair share for the harm they have caused. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey believes that in a just and resilient New Jersey, we must hold polluters accountable for the destruction they have caused and ensure that our infrastructure can withstand the further impacts of climate change. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chairwoman Sumter, and members of the committee. My name is Antoinette Miles, and I'm the State Director for New Jersey Working Families. As an organization, we were founded to support policies that promote the well-being and economic vitality of working families. And so I'm here today in strong support of the Climate Superfund Act because this bill would simply put ensure that the companies responsible for our ongoing climate crisis are finally forced to pay their fair share to deal with the impacts it is causing on New Jersey residents and communities. I want to emphasize that this bill is fundamentally about fairness. It is about justice and repairing the harms that have been done, not just to our environment, but also to our public health and to our communities. We know that working families, particularly in low-income communities and communities of color, are bearing a disproportionate brunt of the long legacy of pollution from dirty oil and gas companies in our state. And so we know that places like Newark and the Ironbound live near factories and dirty oil and gas plants, while in other places these types of things are not tolerated. But it must be emphasized, we know pollution knows no boundaries. right? And that we know that these public health impacts are causing harm to all communities across our state, and we have one of the worst air quality standards in the state. This legislation is designed to provide the critical resources that we need to combat these compounding crises, but also just to make sure that mega corporations pay their fair share for the problems that they have caused. This measure is even more important now, as many have mentioned, the federal administration is leveraging many devastating and vicious cuts to environmental protections. And so now is the time that New Jersey act, and Trenton can step up to make sure that we have the resources to mitigate and remediate our communities. So when the next disaster happens, we have the resources we need. Again, I just want to say thank you for your time and attention. I'm in strong support of this bill, and thank you. I'm willing to answer any questions you may have.
Sure.
Thank you. I meant to ask the gentlemen who were up here before, but I have a thing going with Ms. Miles where we spar over committees, and she's good at it, so that's why I like and respect her. So nice to see you again in similar seats here. So you just brought it to mind, but this question is for anybody who comes up and anyone up here at the dais. But I'll use your words, Ms. Miles. You said I don't want to misquote you, something to the effect of mega corporations that are responsible for the climate emergency need to pay their fair share. Which companies and how much? Because the bill, and I'll just say one more thing, the bill says certain fossil fuel companies are liable for certain damages. Again, which companies and what are certain damages? I feel like we need names and numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that question, Ms. Emily. I am going to defer to a lot of the environmental organizations that are working really hard on this. From my perspective, I do think that we understand in this state, right, what our Superfund sites are. We understand that, you know, when the Superfund Act was first passed in New Jersey, you know, many decades ago, that it was supposed to make sure that we can address these fundamental issues, right, and making sure that we can remediate. And that hasn't happened yet. I understand that the language of this bill is supposed to make sure that the state treasurer is supposed to go and take an accounting, if you will, right, of what these impacts are and make an assessment, right, that is in line with what they perceive to be the cost of these issues. And so, you know, this is not just going after corporations for the sake of going after them, but I think it is making sure that we have these companies being responsible for their role in pollution in our communities. So I don't have a definitive of who and how much, but I understand that the legislation is supposed to allow for the state treasurer to make an assessment about that amount. And I think that the Superfund Act, as it previously existed, should give us some parameters around who those people are.
I appreciate it. Ma'am, I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
Yeah,
Do you know the answer of who and who are we holding responsible? And how much are we charging?
Oh yeah, my name is Siobhan Gibbons, and the people who are being asked to pay are the super emitters. And there is a definition of that, which I think is about 1 billion tons.
It's more than 1 billion metric tons
of greenhouse gases since 1995. And if you want names, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and so on, the biggest ones. So it's not everyone, but the biggest ones, is my understanding.
All in New Jersey, though.
The ones who are operating in New Jersey.
So ExxonMobil is, or was, I think they're leaving New Jersey. Are the other ones?
I don't know of the other ones, if anyone can tell.
Okay. Maybe,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You can get that information from the state treasurer. Somebody whispered that.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you.
So they don't have to guess. So you have to.
Sure.
Oh, not so fast.
Get back here.
Okay. In fact, you said something that sort of, you know, jogged a question. You said pollution knows no boundaries. So, you know, we're holding specific companies responsible in New Jersey for climate change that holistically, if you look at it, is a global phenomenon. So we have China building coal plants, one a week. We have India, Nigeria, all of these countries with a third of the world's population, with less than stellar, let's leave it at that, environmental standards. Yet we're singling out New Jersey companies for climate change, which I'm sure there's plenty of sources contributing to this. Now, I know the Superfund site has been a long-established thing, and when you look at Ciba-Geigy and things like that, you can see the source. You know the source. Can we really prove the source of global climate change to specific corporations in New Jersey and say, yes, that's it? And the problem with this is, I'm not even sure if this is constitutional, where you can assume guilt. Is there a way to prove that those specific companies who made a legal product that was much in demand, that was encouraged by the government to create, are responsible and should be punitively punished in a state that is already the number near the bottom or the worst?
Please stand the bill.
Yep, the worst economic environment. So I'm just trying to get at that. We're going to create more of a burden on that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think fundamentally what I want to say is, you mentioned the word punitive, and what I think is really punitive is that we have communities where people are literally dying and suffering from the impact of these polluters, right? And we as taxpayers and also individuals continue to bear that cost out, whether it's coming out of our pockets or coming out of our state budgets to address a lot of these issues. But to your point, right, is sort of, what is New Jersey's responsibility here, I think is the fundamental question. And so I do not think this is the moment for us to advocate responsibility simply because, yes, this is a global issue, right? I think that other states have proven that they can step up, right? I think New York has been a model for how to do this. And so New Jersey should be a regional partner in this so that we can address it more holistically, right? And so that we can address it across, state boundaries, and then hopefully in a regional sense of it as that. And so I think I would just encourage that, again, now is not the time for New Jersey to advocate responsibility because the issue seems to be too big or too multi-sectorial in nature, but it's time for us to step up because our residents are really needing us to be able to hold these companies accountable, especially at this time. I think that Columbia University, I'm going to forget the climate center's exact name, but the Columbia University has a climate center that looked and started tracking a lot of the rollbacks that are happening underneath the current federal administration to policies that were even passed under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so we have seen these rollbacks happen. And so I just emphasize that New Jersey does have a role to play and that this is a regional approach that we should start to take, and other states have started to do this as well.
According to this bill, how are we going to be able to assign specific responsibility to a specific company? If you have, any thoughts?
I don't have this specific answer for you to that. There are people here who are part of the Working Families Coalition that have a lot more expertise on that. But again, I believe my understanding is that the treasurer, along with working with other state departments such as DEP and others, would be able to make an assessment in terms of these impacts. And like New York's bill has a specific number to it, as I understand it. And this bill specifically does not have a number in terms of the revenue because it does allow for the flexibility of the state agencies to go and make a practical assessment of what that impact is. And so, we're not just going to be handing out bills to fossil fuel companies and saying, here's what you owe. I think it is really coming at it from an approach that will be holistic and actually, reflect what we think the impacts are.
Thank you.
No problem. Do I have permission to get up? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, next we have Amy Goldsmith, Carolyn McGrath, and Reverend Jack Kufari.
Hello, my name is Amy Goldsmith. I'm the New Jersey State Director for Clean Water Action. We're a national organization. We have 150,000 members and 75,000 email subscribers in the state of New Jersey. I want to thank the sponsors of the bill. who brought this forth. It's time for New Jersey to lead the way again, as it has in the past, when it comes to making polluters pay. We tell our kids to, you make a mess, you have to clean it up. Climate Superfund is telling big corporate polluters for them to clean up their mess by paying for the climate impacts that they've caused. We see precedent with this with the tobacco industry, with Big Pharma. They were forced to pay for their wrongdoing, and they were also forced to acknowledge that they knew decades ago, in this case, climate impacts. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, they all knew, and yet they didn't do the right thing. So it's only fair, it's only just fair for them to pay to make New Jersey more affordable, make it more resilient to climate change for our towns, for our residents, and the state. We know that climate affects us all, but it does not affect us equally, as others have said. While I live on the Jersey Shore, Newark and inland communities have been hit hard and have had no resources and little attention given to them. Marginalized communities and housing is typically built in flood-prone areas where people live and pay the cost, in some cases, with their lives, as they did in Elizabeth. Climate change is not just about greenhouse gases, although this is the measure that is being used to assess in the Climate Superfund, but it is also about the proportional share that should be paid by the companies, and it also must address the other damages caused by the co-pollutants associated with greenhouse gases, as others have mentioned. So, in conclusion, I just want to say that I have worked for decades at the ports, where we've seen diesel and traffic corridors affecting people. Climate Superfund will not solve all the issues of climate, but it will give some compensation and remedies in the place that we need to make our state more sustainable and more affordable, and make sure that the polluters pay, not the taxpayers, and not the state, not the towns, not the school districts, to pay for climate change. Thank you.
Hi, my name is, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Thank you. My name is Carolyn McGrath. I've been a high school teacher for 27 years, although you wouldn't know it because I'm very nervous right now. Okay, so it took me over 20 years as a teacher to save enough money to buy a small home in the school district where I live. When I purchased the home, I barely noticed the small trickle of a creek that ran along the backside of the property through my neighbor's yards. But 2 years later, that creek swelled so wide and high that it threatened to swallow up my house and the houses of other residents along the road. That was 2021, when Hurricane Ida blew through New Jersey, as she said, causing widespread damage to homes, businesses, and schools, including the one where I teach. Climate scientists have told us New Jersey can anticipate increases in total annual precipitation, as well as heavier rainfall during extreme weather events. So we know what we experienced from Ida is not the end of it. I reached out to my township officials who told me that this was the residents' problem to manage. This is the homeowner's problem. I worked with a private engineer who said that the best remedy for many of the houses on our road was either to abandon them or to raise the homes, both of which would include a huge financial loss. I'm not telling you this story to invoke pity. There are many people across the state who are in worse circumstances, but as you already mentioned, big oil companies knew about this going back to the 1950s, and residents of New Jersey today are paying the price. So I'm asking you to make polluters pay for what they've done. It's time to fund adaptation and mitigation, and to support residents across the state who are suffering the most. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? This is on, right? Thank you all for your good and faithful service to the people of New Jersey. My name is Reverend Jack Afari. I'm the pastor of the First Congregational Church in Haworth, up in Bergen County. But I'm speaking today on behalf of the Interfaith Climate Action Group, 16 and growing faith communities in the Montclair area, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Unitarians, Quakers, united in our belief that creation is a sacred gift, and we believe that all of us have a moral obligation to speak for the well-being of the planet, to protect the health and safety of our neighbors and future generations. We speak up because we care for those most impacted and to advocate that a path for a healthy future for all be built, regardless of zip code. We are committed to a future that is free of fossil fuels and abundant in clean, renewable energy. Now, in reality, all of us here have had some kind of personal experience with climate damage. The New Jersey Atlas of Disaster reported that between 2011 and 2023, there were 14 climate disaster declarations, not including the fires that we've experienced in the past year. All 21 New Jersey counties have had 5 or more disasters. This bill would provide many opportunities for future protection from flooding, extreme heat, and other unnatural disasters. As representatives of multiple congregations, representing thousands of citizens, we are here in support of the Climate Superfund Act. We call on the New Jersey legislature to demand that the fossil fuel industry take full responsibility for the extensive climate chaos and damage they have created, and to repair the harm they have caused and to mitigate against future harm. We look forward to partnering with you as this bill moves forward. History is watching, and God will judge.
Next we have Matt Smith, Doug O'Malley, and Isabella Mullane. I don't know if I got Isabella's name right.
Isabel.
Good afternoon again, Chair, members of the board. Matt Smith, Food and Water Watch. I'll start just by addressing the question of who these corporations are and how they're determined as responsible parties under the bill. Globally, there are about 100 corporations, fossil fuel corporations, who are responsible for 70% of emissions from the sector globally. This list, when pared down to those who do business in the state of New Jersey, meeting the Constitution's nexus requirement, is about 30 of the world's largest corporations. This data is also publicly available on the DEP website and was provided to this committee in a memo in print form. These corporations have emitted more than 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions between the years 1995 and 2024. The state treasurer is assigned to assess the damages caused to the state of New Jersey by climate change through extreme weather events, wildfires, impacts to infrastructure. Once that study is completed by the treasurer's office, you then have these 30 corporations will pay a share of the damages that is equal to their responsibility for the aggregate emissions globally. So it has nothing to do with needing to track the emissions forensically to the source. The emissions are known. We know the companies who have produced them. And all we're saying is that the damages that they've caused in New Jersey, which are very clear and tallyable, and the Treasury will determine, should be covered by those corporations, not by New Jersey taxpayers and consumers. So this bill is really an affordability bill for the state of New Jersey. I know that's a deep concern across all political ideologies now. It is about creating jobs in the state of New Jersey, safeguarding and improving our infrastructure for the next century.
It is about making our communities safer and healthier, restoring wetlands to do water filtration, replanting our forests, upgrading our water treatment facilities, even doing things like hardening the grid so that we can use power when future extreme weather events occur. So this bill is a no-brainer. We are thankful for the chair for taking it up, and I won't take any more of your time. I will urge support of the Climate Superfund Act. Thank you.
You spoke at the top about the specific companies that are liable for this. Let's go back to ExxonMobil. We were using that example earlier. They're on their way out of Hunterdon County. They had a research and development facility there, between 400 and 500 employees. I don't know the exact number. They're on their way out. I don't know if they have a footprint elsewhere. Let's say this bill passes today. The governor signs it tomorrow. The state treasurer does her due diligence. ExxonMobil makes the list, as it presumably would. They're levying a fee of some number that we still don't know. Once ExxonMobil does shut off the lights, and there is no one left in New Jersey, which they're very close to doing, they're done. They don't owe New Jersey anything, right?
So you're referencing a single facility in Hunterdon County. Exxon has a huge footprint across the state as retailer, importer, wholesaler of fuels, motor oil products, you name it, Exxon's selling it if it's fossil fuel derived in the state of New Jersey. So they would literally need to close all of their operations, which represents hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for a single corporation. I hardly think that a small fraction of their profitability in a Superfund assessment is going to drive them to shut their doors entirely in the state.
Okay, so as long as they have one employee.
As long as they pay sales tax in the state of New Jersey.
As long as they pay sales tax in the
Correct.
state of New Jersey. And you're saying they're stuck. I mean, it's going to be tough for them.
This is an assessment of their historical emissions anyway. So it's not forward-looking. It is between 95 and 2024. Exxon had a very substantial footprint in the state of New Jersey, emitted substantial pollution that led to significant and calculable economic damages to the state, and they should be responsible for those damages.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Doug O'Malley, Director of Environment New Jersey. I wanted to thank my colleague Matt's testimony. I also wanted to thank the prime sponsor of this legislation, Assemblyman John Allen, as well as the prime sponsors on this committee, Assemblyman Hall and Assemblyman Clovis-Gill. Thank you for your leadership on this key issue. I wanted to talk a little bit about the costs that we've incurred from climate change and the costs to come. Right, so nationally every year there's $150 billion of damage. Sandy was $36 billion, Ida was $9 billion. Right, and we all have seen home insurance costs go up. That's because we've seen more climate change and extreme weather events across the country. But what to come is really what should scare us. The Union of Concerned Scientists estimates New Jersey is the #1 state for residential property at risk at the shore, and number 2 on residential, #1 on commercial. Right, so that is the risk in front of us. And when we think of the potential for sea level rise, which obviously is going to be in coastal areas as well that are inland, it's 1.5 feet at the Jersey Shore by mid-century and 6 feet by the end of the century. And the key thing to understand is that climate attribution science is getting really good at figuring out what amount of that pollution is attributed to what emitters. So of that 36 billion from Sandy, 8 billion was coming from additional warming from oil and gas majors. And when we look at the litigation from the Attorney General's office, it talks specifically not just about the research of the oil and gas majors, but about climate attribution science and the fact that the warming we're seeing was predicted by ExxonMobil back in the 1980s. Their climate science was spot on 40 years ago. And of course, New Jersey has been the leader on not just Superfund, but on the Spill Act, which was passed 49 years ago. The Spill Act was the preeminent law that led to the Superfund. And this bill has the same concept of holding climate polluters responsible for their impacts so that we, the taxpayers, are not held facing the bill. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon again. My name is Isabel Molina with New Jersey LCD. Apologies that my handwriting has been rude today, but thank you for bearing with me, Chairman. So, New Jersey is one of the fastest warming, if not the fastest warming, state in the rest of the country. And so not only is our sea level rising, but also due to our climate activity, New Jersey is also sinking. That means our flooding is only getting worse. The oil and gas industry has known about this connection between burning fossil fuels and climate change for a very long time, before the first man was put on the moon. And a lot of speakers have emphasized these points, and I think I just want to underscore one primary thing, which is that these storms are costing us more and more money. Between 1980 and 2024, there were 74 confirmed weather and climate disaster events, with losses exceeding $1 billion each, that affected New Jersey, including droughts, flooding, freezing, severe storms, and tropical cyclones. And at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for the cost of this infrastructure, and why not the polluters themselves who are contributing this? So in the next few years, with the federal outlook for investment in government programs not looking good, to say the least, we need to step up. New Jersey needs to step up. So we urge you to vote yes on this Climate Superfund Act bill and hold accountable those industries that knowingly put us and our public health and our climate at risk. Thank you.
Ben Dozenbeck, Brian Russo, and Taylor McFarland.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to take a quick moment on that first question or second question in relation to while India and China are heavy polluters, why should we do anything about it, right? That's equivalent to your house is burning down and your neighbor's house is burning down and you being angry at your neighbor while the arsonist is standing outside. So my name is Ben Jovek, the Executive Director of Climate Revolution Action Network. As you can see, there's a lot of young people in the audience today. It's because we are pushing this Climate Superfund so they don't have to pay for the rest of their lives. I travel around the state every single day. It's my 5 to 12, right? And the first thing that I hear from every single young person is, I am scared about my future and I don't know how to afford it, right? So we are giving tax breaks out to the ultra wealthy. The oligarchs are taking over our government and cutting FEMA and other agencies that would help the state pay for problems like this. And there's going to be no money left for New Jersey, right? So we need to figure out a smart, responsible, not radical, way to do this. And if we're going to say that we have to name the corporations, and each and every one of them, we know for the last 50, 70 years, they've been changing names, they've been moving around to shell corporations. So this is no different than any other bill that this committee or any other committee would hear where the treasurer or another state government apparatus would determine the costs of the legislation you pass. That is a simple concept, right? Look, I'm not going to go on for too much longer, but Gen Z is watching. Gen Alpha is watching. Because this is about our future. I live at the shore. I'm watching the beach disappear every day. I lived through Sandy. I was without power for 4 weeks, right? So we have to take action. It's time to pass the Climate Superfund Act.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's almost evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Taylor McFarland, and I'm the Conservation Program Manager for the Sierra Club New Jersey chapter. The Sierra Club is one of the oldest and largest environmental nonprofits in the nation. We support the Climate Superfund Act. It's an essential tool that will hold fossil fuel companies accountable while providing a long-term funding mechanism to pay for climate damages and resilience projects in New Jersey. Climate disasters have already cost states billions of dollars, as we've heard before, from severe weather, wildfires, floods, and sea level rise. We've seen firsthand the impact climate change has in our communities, with Superstorm Sandy costing $37 billion in damage, and Tropical Storm Irene costing $13.5 billion as well. Just last week, the New Jersey Forest Fire Service said the state is seeing more fires that are bigger, hotter, and burning faster. Big oil and gas companies generate the majority of planet heating emissions that amplify extreme weather disasters should cover the cost of the damage. We cannot continue to pay Big Oil's tab for their negligence. New Jersey still does not have a dedicated state-level funding source to help municipalities plan and support smart infrastructure that will make communities safe and resilient from climate impacts. The funds from the Climate Superfund Act are a perfect supplement. It will help kickstart critical resilience projects like investing in nature-based solutions, protecting communities, and infrastructure from natural disasters. Unfortunately, we cannot rely on federal funding since our current president thinks climate change is a scam and wants to shift the cost of climate change from polluting industries directly onto us. That is why New Jersey needs to act now. New Jersey and Vermont have already signed a Climate Superfund Act into law. California and Maryland and Massachusetts are already working on bills to get them signed. New Jersey needs to follow. The longer we wait, the longer fossil fuel companies are getting away without paying their tab. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Russo. Hi, my name is Brian Russo. I'm Climate Advocacy's chair and speaking on behalf of Climate Reality Project, New Jersey. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I have some insider information. I apologize if this is redundant. I hope you find it relevant. I worked for a large insurance company for nearly 10 years when I saw firsthand the amount of waste from the auto industry. While training in a course with an engineer manufacturer, he was discussing how the Obama administration required that vehicles got better gas mileage to lower emissions. I asked if there was any consideration for the composite materials that were being introduced in the environment that are not biodegradable, not recyclable, and would exist forever. He said, no, we don't care about that. That raised a red flag that vehicle manufacturers do not care about their environmental impact. In fact, they have planned obsolescence, have single-use parts in production, have been known to sabotage public transportation. Electric vehicles existed in the 1800s. Ford made a vehicle that ran on carbon-neutral biofuel made with hemp that can power diesel vehicles with no modifications. In fact, there have been prototypes for low-emission vehicles that never came to be. We have been dependent on fossil fuels and fighting wars for resources by design. Working for an insurance company, we got profit share every year. It was known that our profit share was mostly determined by the amount of catastrophes that we would see. So every year, more and more climate catastrophes would occur and we would make less money. So now we're losing our jobs and being replaced by AI. The damages from climate change are exceeding the profit margin, and it is clear that insurance companies have a vested interest in reducing emissions, catastrophic climate events to remain profitable. Now we're seeing auto insurance company prices rise and insurance companies pull out of and raising premiums in states most affected by climate change. The price of owning, leasing, maintaining, and insuring vehicles has skyrocketed. The same thing is happening with homeowners insurance. It's clear that it's not sustainable. The amount of damages caused by extreme weather events is exceeding insurance companies' profit margin. I will skip the timeline about the fossil fuel industry knowing the impact of burning fossil fuels and the conscious decision they've made to spread misinformation. However, it was the automotive innovation with the Alliance of Fossil Fuels that forced Bush to withdraw from the Paris Agreement in 2001. The American people deserve the truth, and the fossil fuel industry should pay for the damages they've caused. I'm asking for everybody to consider for their children, the future of humanity, and all life on this planet to pass the Climate Superfund Act. Thank you.
Next, we have David Pringle, Sebastian Gibbons, and Kate Delaney.
I'd like to defer until towards the end, if I might, unless it's speak now or forever hold your peace.
At the end of the whole thing?
Towards the end, I'd like to hear some of the industry and opposition comments before I testify. That way my testimony will be unique.
Bring the Pringle back.
All right.
Kate Delaney at the stage.
And Hillary
Perfect time for you.
Can I crawl? I'm so sorry.
I think he's right. I don't think I've ever seen anybody.
Yeah, wow.
I gotta figure out how to leave that for her.
Thank you, Chairman. Mike Eggington, New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. We oppose this legislation. The major policy concern with the bill is the implication that the fossil fuel industry is solely responsible for greenhouse gas emissions and their impact on climate change. The natural gas and oil industries continue to work at implementing cost-effective and achievable measures that drive greenhouse gas emission reductions down while ensuring affordable and reliable energy to meet the growing energy needs of our state and nationally. They've also invested in new technologies and lower carbon energy alternatives. Let us not admit that many of our member companies provide jobs and ratables to New Jersey's economy and have invested in state-of-the-art initiatives and job growth here in New Jersey. There are some obvious and inevitable outcomes regarding this bill. The State Chamber believes that this bill will only increase the cost of natural gas, leading to increased electric rates. And we know what the hearings have been like in that arena that will continue to hinder economic growth in our state. We will see higher prices for the New Jersey consumer, and the trickle-down effect from this legislation will obviously be felt by most of our state's medium, small, mom-and-pop businesses. There will also be countless legal challenges. New Jersey should not act on this legislation while it's being litigated. Our national association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, has already filed a federal lawsuit against the state of Vermont and New York. While the state's environmental issues are very important to all of us, we must keep that same level of importance focused on New Jersey's fiscal well-being, especially since many in my membership right now are concerned with not the next budget cycle that you will all be going into in the next few weeks, but the one after that, the next 2 state budget cycles. We respectfully oppose this bill based not only on the potential impact it will have on many companies and businesses that call New Jersey home, but also on the devastating and unintended consequences this legislation will have on our New Jersey businesses and residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Hillary Trebra, Director of Government Affairs for the South Jersey Chamber of Commerce. We agree with my colleague from the State Chamber. While addressing the environmental and economic challenges posed by climate change is a goal that we share, we do oppose this legislation because of the potentially harmful impacts this could have on our business climate. We share the major concern, and this is largely the concern that we are opposing the bill for, is the broad and retroactive nature of the liability provisions in the bill. Creating this precedent of looking back and applying liability to businesses for lawful operations that were conducted in compliance with state and federal regulations at the time that they occurred is a bad precedent and could really make businesses look at New Jersey as an unfriendly place to do business. And that's not something we want. We want to be cheerleaders of New Jersey and the business climate that we have here. Also, I just want to echo the concerns about that this legislation is being currently litigated in states that have implemented it, including New York. So we do want to just urge you to take a step back and look at this legislation, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Ed Waters. I'm Senior Director of Government Affairs for the Chemistry Council of New Jersey, and CCNJ is also opposed to this bill. We are concerned regarding Assembly Bill 4696 because it retroactively imposes costs and liabilities on activities that were legal during the period outlined in this bill. It's not only, that's an important point. These companies were working within their legal rights to extract fuels, and in fact they were encouraged by the federal government to do so. Our federal government has a strategic oil reserve that is part of our national security, and these companies are contributing to helping make sure that our country is safe by doing so. We also have concerns about the liability. Liability should not be attached simply because a company extracted or refined fossil fuels that were placed into commerce and combusted by third parties. If A 4696 is enacted into law, companies would have to pay the state tens of billions of dollars based on emissions from the combustion of fossil fuels that they extracted or refined, but they did not themselves combust, without the state having to show that those emissions resulted in any environmental damage at all, or even that any existing environmental damage was caused or made worse by climate change. By imposing a fee on past activities shows that this bill is not designed to change business or consumer behavior, but the main goal of this legislation is to create a new source of state funding. Again, this bill imposes extreme liability without regard to the extent of a particular business' actual responsibility by targeting and imposing strict liability only on the extraction and refinement of fossil fuels. The bill disregards the fact that most emissions are generated by the actual use of fossil fuels and not by their refinement or extraction. And just real quick, the New Jersey Society for Economic and Environmental also put in a letter, and that's a group that many of our organizations are also part of. Thank you.
Any questions? Next we have Ray Cantor, Alex Danielle, and David Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ray Cantor again, NJBIA. I greatly respect you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of this committee, but I'm concerned that we're only given 2 minutes to speak about a bill that is so consequential and will have such a negative impact on the New Jersey economy. The Senate sponsor of this bill, Senator McKeon, estimated that it would cost $25 billion, $25 billion, and we're giving it 2 minutes. New York's bill is targeted at $75 billion, and maybe this will be a $75 billion too, because it's up to DEP to determine whether or not, what those numbers are. So I just want to raise that up front. We object to this bill for 5 main reasons. I submitted comments to everyone, but I'm going to try and summarize it as best I can in my time. As was mentioned before, fossil fuels are legal. They've been legal. We all use fossil fuels. We all drove here today using fossil fuels. We're all going to leave here today with fossil fuels, and that will continue way into the future. Our modern economy is built on fossil fuels. In the year 1900, life expectancy in the United States was 35 years of age. It's well over 70 now. It's that we've progressed the way we have because we have a modern economy with modern infrastructure, all funded or based on fossil fuels. We would be living back in the agrarian age, but for fossil fuels. So let's not demonize fossil fuels without recognizing the enormous benefits it's had to society. This bill also assumes that there are damages, and I just need to address the total misinformation that's been going on. The bill is premised on the fact that horrible things have happened through natural disasters due to climate change and therefore from fossil fuels. I will refer you all to page 2 of my testimony that I submitted. I'm going to refer you to the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They are the gold standard on climate change impacts. And if you read their AR6 report, which came out 3 years ago, you will see that all the attribution people are attributing to climate change and fossil fuels, it's just not happening. We're not seeing more storms. We're not seeing more floods. We're not seeing all the disasters that are being said to have happened. Again, it's not me, it's the IPCC, it's the United Nations that are saying that. Again, Mr. Chairman, I can go on for hours on how bad this bill is. It's retroactivity, it's cost to the pump, the cost to heat your homes, the cost to food production, but I know I've already stated my time. Thank you.
May I ask a question? I asked at the top about, quantifying this. What sort of numbers are we talking about here? This is the first time I heard a number, 25 billion. Can you contextualize that for us, Mr. Cantor? 25 billion is about half our state budget. Is that over some number of years?
I believe it has to be paid out over 10 years. And again, I threw out 25 billion because the Senate sponsor said 25 billion. For all we know, it could be $100 billion. There's no limits on what DEP, in their wisdom of how to determine what damages are going to come up and do this. And this has to be paid by, I believe, the 50 or so, companies that have provided fossil fuels to New Jersey over the last 25 years. So there's really no number here. I'm just quoting Senator McKeon. Again, New York, 75 billion. And by the way, the sponsor of New York put in 75 billion. He said, I really don't know what the number is, but it seems about right. Not too low, not too high. I don't know what DEP at all is going to do.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Alex Daniel. I'm General Counsel for the New Jersey Civil Justice Institute. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit coalition that advocates for efficiency, fairness, and predictability in our civil justice system. And what brings us here today is our concern about predictability in the law. For better or for worse, for the last 120 years, our national and state governments have actively encouraged and permitted fossil fuel extraction and refining as part of a national, cohesive energy policy. It's been the bedrock of that policy for a century. That didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a choice made by our government to actively encourage those activities to ensure that Americans had access to ultimately affordable and readily available energy supplies. But what this bill wants to do is going to invite legal challenges. The simple reason for that is it wants to reach back in time and penalize companies for engaging in what were and remain perfectly legal and government and encouraged activities. Those legal challenges are going to take several forms. We outlined them in our memorandum. The first, and I think foremost, preemption under our Federal Clean Air Act. The Federal Clean Air Act ultimately provides a comprehensive system for regulating emissions into our environment. The doctrine of preemption says that when federal law and state law conflict, federal law predominates. And I'm going to quote Judge Douglas Hurd of our Mercer County Superior Court, who just recently dismissed claims brought against a number of petroleum companies by the state of New Jersey pursuant to state law with respect to climate change. Judge Hurd found that only federal law can govern interstate and international emissions because the basic scheme of our Constitution demands it. We have a federalized system for regulating the environment. And whether we like it or not, that federalized system predominates over the states. The states have a role. They are secondary enforcers. They can enforce environmental regulations prospectively. But with respect to these laws, the states are not able to ultimately regulate in this fashion. We also have concerns about the due process clause. Like I said, it's been 120 years of active encouragement from our central and state governments. There is a settled expectation that people have when they are permitted to engage in economic activities, when they're told they're legal and they're encouraged to do it. And our due process clause says you can't reach back in time and punish people for things that we specifically said you can do. What are the settled expectations? Well, 120 years of permitting. And that 120 years has given us a system where 80% of our energy is supplied by fossil fuels. 12 million jobs are currently supported by fossil fuels. And the result is those companies ultimately have settled expectations to due process clause protects. Lastly, there are interstate commerce concerns. I won't belabor the point, but the interstate commerce clause ultimately holds that there are limits on the state's ability to reach outside their borders to regulate state activities. So I end with this. In the end, it's not going to be just a handful of companies that pay the price for this. It's going to be consumers, residents, people in New Jersey who can see higher prices, higher costs for heating their homes, buying their food, driving their cars. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman. David Pringle, representing Power New Jersey. Assemblyman Ingenort, you asked a very fair question. Who pays how much? Oh, excuse me. I know that better than anyone. All right. Anyway, David Pringle, Power New Jersey. Assemblyman Eganort, you raised a very fair question. Who pays how much? Besides, some folks have already answered some of your question. Based on New York's experience, they picked a number. They estimated the cost would be $3 billion. They put it in the bill. Vermont said, the executive, you figure it out. New Jersey's following the Vermont model. I don't think the advocates have a massive opinion either way, which way to go. But based on the New York experience and where Vermont's headed, we're estimating it's going to be about $1 billion a year. That's where the $25 billion comes from. Over 30 years, Ray, not in 1 year. That's less than 2% of the state's current budget. And frankly, it's still a fraction of companies that made the mess, paying a small fraction of the damage they caused using a tiny fraction of their profits. They're making billions every year. They're making more money under Biden than they made under Trump 1. And we all know under Trump policies, Trump 2, they're going to be making even more money. So they can afford it. And Nobel laureate economists are telling us that they aren't going to be able to pass that cost on to consumers because the global oil market is so massive and because it only covers some companies. Other companies can undercut them if they try to raise their prices. I think the shareholders of Exxon and the CEOs can handle it. Assemblyman Scharfenberger, frankly, I'm not sure your question is fair because I can only think of two reasons that you asked it. Either denying the damages caused by climate change that taxpayers, consumers, ratepayers, and victims are currently paying, or suggesting that that damage is happening and the profiteers should not pay for it. We all should. The emissions today matter. Global emissions, total footprint matter too. The carbon dioxide in our air now is going to be there for 100 years. The U.S. is 150% more responsible than any other country, including China, for the amount of global warming gases in the air right now. So yes, we need China and India to reduce their emissions, and you know what? China's doing a heck of a lot better on electric vehicles than we are. So let's look at ourselves before we point fingers somewhere else. This is not a penalty. This is not punishment. We are paying right now. This is like taxes. The question is, who's going to pay? Should the victims, the taxpayers, the ratepayers, and the consumers? Or the folks who have been lying about climate change from the 1970s? They knew, and we're being really kind. We're only going back 30 years. We're not going back to what they knew 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So, if you want to blame the victim, don't support this bill. If you want profiteers to continue profiting at our expense, don't vote for this bill. Thank you very much.
Seeing none? School's out. Now, we have a few slips, I won't read them. These are opposed, and speak by us in favor. Entertain a motion?
Second.
Okay.
On the motion to amend and release Assembly Bill 4696, Assemblyman Scharfenberger?
No.
Assemblyman Ganamore?
No.
Assemblywoman Cass?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hall?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Colazo-Scale?
The answer is yes, but I do want to say something because this is the committee that has the most complicated bills from all my committees. Complicated bills, technical bills, but this actually is one of the most easy to understand kind of bills that I've seen. The question about who will pay for this, we are paying for it. The taxpayers are paying. We are all paying for these kinds of consequences of climate change through our healthcare bills, through our actual health. Homeowners insurance is coming out. People are losing their homes. We are actually paying for these damages right now. And I'm a little bit concerned that we spend so much energy trying to find out how are these poor companies, corporations are going to pay those bills. And I hope that we can use the same energy to make sure that we advocate for the people that are serving, that are living in the state who do not have those kinds of billions of dollars to pay for their homes, or pay for their home insurance. And again, I would say one more thing. Even if student loans, people who have student loans, when they move from state to state, the government, those companies will follow them to make sure that those student loans get paid. So I don't understand the energy that we're placing and to make sure that these poor little companies, corporations that are doing we know they have polluted, that they have contributed to this climate change, are paying for it. So I guess my 2 minutes are up. The answer is absolutely, the answer is absolutely yes, and thank you, Chairman, for bringing this bill to the table.
Vice Chair Sumter.
I echo the sentiments of my Assembly colleague and want to thank her for making it plain. While you all are very skilled, and thank you to the testifiers on the technicalities of the bill, but understanding the direct impact, thank you for making that plain for those who may be listening, and my vote is yes.
Chairman Kennedy.
Yes.
The bill is released.
Please read the record on A2308, including amendments.
Assembly Bill number 2308 as amended, and Senate Bill number 1991R requires environmental sustainability plan for State House complex. The proposed committee amendments to Assembly Bill number 2308 make the bill identical to its Senate counterpart, Senate Bill number 1991R. Specifically, the proposed committee amendments replace a reference to biodegradable or bioplastic utensils with compostable utensils and make a technical change to the bill.
Okay, we have Kathy Lynette in favor, no need to testify. We have Taylor McFarland in favor, no need to testify. Doug O'Malley in favor, no need to testify. Dr. Rebecca Levesque from Richard Law in favor, no need to testify. Mike Eganton in favor, no need to testify. And Isabella Mala in favor, no need to testify. Motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
On the motion to amend and release Assembly Bill number 2308 and to release its identical counterpart, Senate Bill number 1991R, Assemblyman Scharfenberger,
Yes.
Assemblyman Ganamore,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Katz,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hall,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kawasaki-Field,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sumter,
Yes.
and Chairman Kennedy.
Yes.
The bills are released.
Christina, please read the record on A3534, including amendments.
Assembly Bill number 3534, as amended, establishes a time frame for the adoption of and requires public comment on proposed host community benefit agreements for certain solid waste facilities and authorizes residents to petition the state to establish or adjust a host community benefit. The proposed committee amendments to the bill replace all references to a host community benefit agreement and change that to an annual economic benefit to accurately represent the type of benefit that is provided currently in the law, and to update the bill's title and synopsis to reflect other changes made to the bill.
Okay, we have a few people that would like to testify. Amy Goldsmith, Erin Nodler, and Michelle Sinonis. No need to testify. She's opposed.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Amy Goldsmith. I'm the State Director for Clean Water Action. And I appreciate the amendment to change the wording to say an economic benefit as opposed to a community benefit. Most of my comments were to reflect the concern about the language being used, so I do appreciate the change. I do also want to say that it is good to have timelines for making decisions, so I appreciate the language that's been added to the bill, and I'm also authorizing residents to petition for some changes around landfills and transfer stations. But I also am concerned that while this bill is now being more clearly defined as economic benefit rather than calling it community benefits, there should be a mechanism in a law, whether it's here or somewhere else, to provide opportunities for host communities, not just to look to get dollars, but to actually get remedies to the problems around transfer stations and landfills. I live near the Tin Falls landfill. It stinks to holy, I'm not going to keep going. And people can't have their windows open, they can't go outside. You can talk about transfer stations, same problems with whether it's garbage, on the streets or the smells and odors. So there needs to be not just a fiscal acknowledgement of being a host community, and the concern that I have is that in getting that money, does that mean that the town is just going to always just like, I just want the money, rather than getting the remedies that need to be sought? We know that towns are cash strapped. You may not want the landfill, you might not want the transfer station, but it is dollars that come in to help you balance your budget. We need to be able to get remedies at our landfills and our transfer stations. So I just wanted to bring those points up in addition to the fact that, money's helpful, but it's not the only answer. And we really need to make sure that we clean up our act at our landfills and our transfer stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the chair, vice chair, members of the committee. My name is Erin Needler. I'm here on behalf of the New Jersey State League of Municipalities. The league initially was opposed to the legislation. However, we just want to thank the sponsor for the amendments, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them in order to raise any concerns and come to some reasonable solutions. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Any questions?
Pardon me, so does the league support the bill?
Not at the moment, but we're working with the sponsor, but the amendments have come a long way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Oh, yes. Second. We got it.
On the motion to amend and release Assembly Bill number 3534, Assemblyman Sharpenberger,
Yes.
Assemblyman Ganamore,
I came in as a yes. I would love to just have a conversation with the league just to understand that a little bit better, so I'm going to respectfully abstain today. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Katz,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hall,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Cavazos Gill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sumter,
Yes.
and Chairman Kennedy.
Yes.
That bill is released.
Christina, please read the record on A 3951, including amendments.
Assembly Bill number 3951 and its Senate counterpart, Senate Bill number 25942R, appropriates $28,670,924 in 2003 and 1992 Bond Act monies for loans for dam restoration and repair projects and inland waters projects. It also includes administrative costs for 17 projects identified in the bill. We have a committee substitute for Assembly Bill number 3951, which makes the bill identical to its Senate counterpart, Senate Bill number 25942R. The committee substitute specifically includes the following changes. It adds a definition section to the bill in order to clarify that the projects funded by the bill are consistent with the projects authorized to be funded by the Green Acres Clean Water Farmland and Historic Preservation Bond Act of 1992 and the Dam, Lake, Stream, Flood Control, Water Resources and Wastewater Treatment Project Bond Act of 2003, which are the sources of funding for the projects financed in the bill. The changes also update a reference to fiscal year 2023 to reflect fiscal year 2024, and it makes a technical correction.
Rebecca Hilbert?
I know this is the bill we're all the most excited about today. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I promise I'll be quick. Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Hilbert, and I'm the External Affairs Associate for the Nature Conservancy of New Jersey. TNC New Jersey has made it a part of our mission to advance dam removals throughout the state, which is a vital strategy for the goal of restoring our rivers, balancing our ecosystems, and protecting our communities. If you remember, and I'll give you a prize if you do, but in my last committee testimony, we talked about how there are 1,700 dams that we know of in New Jersey that are existing and that many of them are considered obsolete and in poor condition. Though the price of dam removal is expensive up front, the maintenance and repair of an aging dam is also costly. And actually, in many cases, it is less expensive in the long run and always the more ecologically beneficial option to remove the dam altogether. The problem is that local governments and private dam owners often need assistance with the upfront costs from dam removals, and we do want to stress mostly today that the monies allocated in this bill are loans to communities from a source that's already been set aside for these types of projects, so we're not talking about the creation of new monies and new funding sources. The bill would provide multiple applicants throughout the whole state with the resources they need to consider removal as an option to strengthen the resilience and the ecological health and safety of their communities. So we hope that you vote yes. Thank you.
The following, we have Taylor McFarland in favor, no need to testify. Dr. Rebecca Lopat for Richard Lawton. In favor, no need to testify. John Bogut-Wall, sorry if I didn't get that one right. In favor, no need to testify. Ryan Sharp, in favor, no need to testify. Aaron Nodler, in favor, no need to testify. And John Bogenthal, I guess he put this in again, so I screw up his name. In favor, no need to testify.
Motion moved, second.
On the motion to substitute Assembly Bill number 3951 and to release its identical counterpart, Senate Bill number 25942R, Assemblyman Scharfenberger,
Yes.
Assemblyman Ganamore,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Katz,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hull,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Colazo-Skill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sumser,
Yes.
and Chairman Kennedy.
Yes.
The bills are released.
Great. So the message from the man above, it says, we didn't expect so much testimony, so A 5195 and A 4679 will be heard at